Hey folks, welcome back to the Courier. Greg, what a week.
It's been quite a time. Also, it's what a week in the sense of everybody seems to be in LA at the moment here for what? OMF, Commotion, Micromobility, gang's all there.
It's conference season. It's yes, everything's happening within a couple important conference halls. But you, meanwhile, are on the other side of the country with an event of your own. No?
Well, it's conference season everywhere. I missed the World Urban Forum in Cairo last week. Also missed Smart City Expo in Barcelona last week. But I at least made it to Miami for the Turner Construction Innovation Summit. So people building buildings. But it was set at the world's most glamorous parking garage, 1111 Lincoln Road, designed by our Swiss friends Herzog and Demoron. Or Demoron.
That's
But
who designed it, but who poured that sexy concrete? That's what the builders want to know.
that is it. As they acknowledge themselves, not our building, but still pretty hot. But I do miss being out there. It's been a few years since I spent time there at the Japanese American Museum there in downtown LA. I remember, Jonah, my first time out in a crowded bar post pandemic was going to Wolf and Cub, I believe it was, where I was
Wolf and
introduced to the
Crane.
Wolf and Crane, where I was introduced to the paper airplane. Oh, what a night! Shocked I remember it, but good times.
Well, it's still kicking, and there's still good conversations to be having about transportation and urbanism and mobility. Does it kind of feel like we're all fiddling while Rome burns, given the non-mobility news of the week? Maybe, but try and push back that thought.
Well, how go the tunes there? So what's the vibe out there this week? I'm picturing Gabe Klein like literally dumping wheelbarrows of cash from the Biden administration onto the crowd before it's all gone.
Haven't seen Gabe yet, but it's a little dance with one left foot and then try and like walk to the funeral with your right foot. I don't know. Everyone, including myself, are all. What's the state of new mobility in America going to be in a couple months? Will Hulk Hogan be Secretary of Transportation?
I look forward to the next year's panel on like rolling coal and exactly just how big can vehicle bloat get.
We got to stay with the times. Yeah.
Exactly. Doing David Zipper to moderate that one will be fun.
But plenty other news to talk about this week, and of course, end of the episode, I speak with Aaryn Nania, the CEO of Connexion. He's got some important news about a product launch. I think he kind of breaks on the podcast. That's exciting. Let's start with some of the fun stuff. Where else is there palace intrigue?
Oh, let's start. Well, a quick line item here from our friends in Saudi Arabia. The CEO of Neom is out. I don't know. I haven't seen many details on this. It's supposed to be a planned strategic move, but your massive mega project is going well, and you're a CEO who could build entire oil field cities from scratch. Apparently, cannot build a line or does not want to. But
it's the world's most closely watched news city. We'll have to keep waiting with bated breath. But I think when you get kicked out of a project like that and your severance package isn't literally being severed, you did all right.
I would say one of the most immortal lines about management I've ever read was in a Bloomberg piece about him, which is when you work for him, you need two buckets: one for all the gold you haul away on that project, and one for all the shit you have to take. So there you are.
Guess we can say that on the podcast.
We can.
And cheerier news: Just Eat Takeaway finally found a buyer. Yeah, ring bell.
I was gonna say I guess we should have known that Mark Laura would be the dumb money, but he's not that dumb money. What is the play here? There's a whole speculation that he's just gonna round up some zombie brands and take them public here. But to me, this is very interesting what it points to. I don't know. I'm curious your take first.
Wonder buying it. No, it is. It's like he's checking all the boxes of things that worked a couple years ago, especially like seemingly like dying New York brands. So he's got he tried the Sprinter vans, that didn't work. He's did like doing food halls in the mall. He's got now, the third declining 3PD. He's also bought they bought some other thing like a year ago. It's also like, head scratcher. Blue Apron, I feel like he's got to also maybe make a play for Fresh Direct or something, just to like throw in one more faded food brand that's popular in the tri-state. But yeah, I don't know. How do you glue it all together, Greg? What's the strategic play here?
That is a good question. Well, our friend Matt Newberg had a piece on this on sort of the future of food halls. It does raise an interesting question here. Like, does this mean that like the pure play ghost kitchen model is finally dead? That you do actually need to have like a really cohesive brick and mortar offering to it? Perhaps. Although that said, was I think what is it? One of our other friends here are actually like thinking that there's gold in them that are ghost kitchens here in 2025 there. So Chef Robotics trying to make a play. So that raises interesting questions. Is the direction of this space towards you want more people and you want to have more amenities and public facing, or is it like if we just use robots to make ghost kitchens cheap enough, like even cheaper, we can actually make this model work? So I'm curious to see how that play works. The other thing I want to note about this, going back to the Sprinter vans, because like pour one out, it is fascinating to me that like that the Wonder's original incarnation, and I would also argue Reef to an extent, this idea of like let's literally take brick and mortar and like melt it away and make it as mobile as possible was probably the zerpiest thing that I think we came up with. That and 15-minute commerce, like, right? Like maximum zerp with unit economics that were never going to work. So it is interesting to me that like, yeah, Mark's just basically scooping up distressed assets and like, hoping that if you just stitch it all together, you get a Frankenstein monster you can take public. But
Yeah, and number to note, he paid about I think 700 million for an asset that was worth 10 times that when Just Eat bought it a
yeah,
couple years
90,
back. So
90% right down there. So I guess, yeah, if you're buying something that's what you think is 10 cents on a dollar, then maybe it's worth it. But we'll see if it's only worth 10 cents on a dollar to somebody else when he gets it out there. But
yeah, it's interesting. No, and I think for a long time the rumor was Amazon would be the only other person that could scoop it up and pour money into it. So
so maybe Mark is doing this out of spite.
yeah,
Let me put it
exactly.
that way. Yes.
You take my diapers, I'll take your. um, Anyways, I think while we're on the topic of food delivery, we had a fun listener suggestion that we should play, you and I, Greg, a little wait, don't tell me style guess the news game. And I'm sure we're going to do a bad job of it because they're a fancy show and we're just winging it. But I got a couple headlines and I'm going to make you guess from them. So speaking of food delivery, there's been a few that are in IPO territory. One, Swiggy, quick trip commerce in India. Two, Delivery Hero spitting out Talabat, which is their Middle Eastern unit. And so, just hunch. Like, what do you think they're worth, and which one's worth more? Give us a little number guessing game here.
Oh God, this is a game designed to show like how actual little prep I do for our podcast. Um,
And
wow.
nothing's as fun as guess the number.
There you go. I'm gonna go with Talabat on this one. I just think that generally it gets slept on, and like obviously the GCC's having a moment here, so I'm gonna guess I don't know nothing Neom levels here, but I'm gonna guess it's higher, and I'm guessing we're like single billions territory.
You're right directionally. Yeah, it's Talabat's worth more, but they're looking at like maybe pulling in 13, 14 billion with the IPO, whereas Swiggy only 11 or 12 billion, which is still an insane amount of money for these things that just burn cash. But
Thank you for also just showing off my like North American biases here, because like of course it can't be worth that much money. No, 8 figures, not seven.
a lot of hungry
10,
mouths
not
in
9.
India and the GCC. But yeah, the thing that's kind of fascinating about the Talabat one is that as a spin out, it'll still be majority owned by Delivery Hero, but it'll actually be worth more than the parent company is. And that seems to be kind of just based on the covenants of like Delivery Hero keeps all the debt. They get to be debt free and profitable. It's going to pay a dividend, but still kind of shows you a little like GCC versus Euro economy divergence there.
Also, those are always the funniest corporate situations. I think my all-time favorite of that was it when Yahoo owned a chunk of Alibaba, I recall. Like, it's always fun when your weirdo parent company owns a piece of an incredible darling. So, yeah, I look forward
Yeah,
to
we accidentally bought this diamond, 10 years ago, and oops, like, good problem to have though.
All right, next question. Let me see if I can do better here. What else you got?
That was my only question.
Well, for listeners then, perhaps we'll come up with some more of them from that as we go back and furiously listen to NPR and figure out our cadence for this one too.
Yeah, listeners, suggest questions. Email me for what I should ask Greg, or email Greg what you should ask me. Do not email us both the same question.
Well, we're keeping this episode short because you have moderating duty. So what's the rest of the week for you here? I mean, obviously, by the time listeners get this, it'll be a little later in the day, maybe. I think this is fairly real time. But
Scooting down to Orange County after after this airs to moderate a panel on clean capital at micromobility with a bunch of familiar faces. But one last news item, I guess Labor eking out a small win on what was otherwise a pretty depressing election night. Massachusetts passed a measure that basically lets TNC gig workers unionize, right? And
You don't
interestingly,
you don't have to, but you can. You can
yeah,
do whatever you feel like. What you're in the
yeah,
mood
yeah,
for.
you're allowed to. You don't have to, but you're allowed to. Was not opposed by Uber and Lyft, and I think on that same coin, lots of labor advocates saying, it doesn't go far enough. It's not federal. It doesn't change classification. But I don't know. This is the era of, I think, take the small wins when you can get them.
I would say, I think in more centrist times, we would have said this is like your classic democracy in action, right? Like nobody left the negotiating table happy. Like Uber and Lyft, kind of meh. Labor advocates, kind of meh. So perhaps a model that we can look forward to. In theory, you can organize, but probably you can't. So
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to keep an eye on Massachusetts drivers, and do they unionize? Does that get them anything? Well, we'll see. And I think obviously that's where the juice will be.
But well, yeah. All right. So last note then. So Jonah, like, speculate seriously. Who do you think will be the Secretary of Transportation? As of this recording, we've got Hegseth nominated for DOD, Gabbard for DNI, Gates for Attorney General. Thankfully, that's beyond the scope of our podcast. So anything's on the table. What do you got for Secretary of DOT?
It's all just so terrible. Like I'm waiting for the funny ones to happen, right? Like these are just like cry, not laugh. The guy that runs Freight Waves. I don't know what his name is, but
There's a good one. I was going to say let's get Travis for some government service. Travis Kalanick, Department of Transportation. See what happens.
I don't know if he's evil enough to run in this administration. He's bad, but is he this bad?
That's true. Well, in somewhat more seriousness, it is interesting how DOT is really the bipartisan sort of sober pick. We had Secretary Chow, of course, married to McConnell. We had Secretary Pete. Back in the day, we had what's his name, LaHood. It was Obama's Republican cabinet pick. I think we were going to assume that VP Harris would have done that if she'd won, but I'm sure we'll get a nice, good run of the road, middle of the road person. Actually, I was going to say my choice.
Someone from a state with no transportation. That's it's just obviously it's going to be that's the one caveat.
Or it's going to be as a Delta Elise, his voice stuck in my head. I'm Richard Anderson. We'll get Richard Anderson, I think, who's currently running Amtrak to this day, perhaps. Or maybe we can dream of Andy Byford, but that's probably a very different administration. Probably very different.
Greg's gone full Delulu.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, I good to see what good arch capitalists will get there for more highways funding, but we'll figure it out.
Stay tuned for that one. All right. Well, on that note, let's talk with Aaryn. And we're back. I'm here with Aaryn Nania, the CEO of Connexion. Hey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jonah. Great to be here.
Calling in all the way from Australia, so mind the time zones, listeners. But no, I think why don't we start with a little bit of background on the company?
Yeah, no worries. So Connexion Mobility, it's a different story. It's been around actually for quite a while. Over 15 years in total. So it was originally founded by an engineer, over 15 years ago. He raised some private capital, eventually backdoor listed the company onto the ASX. So it's been trading as a public company for about 10 years. My background was in funds management, so it was through that lens that I got to know the company. I was originally the financier of one of the debt pieces, sort of further along the track, and then eventually, spent more and more time with the company, and then eventually moved across into this role full time.
But give us the elevator pitch for the company. What's kind of the one-liner?
Yeah, so Connexion today helps automotive retail, so it helps dealerships and OEMs move people, parts, and vehicles. So the niche that we've really started in is courtesy transportation, helping dealerships to manage their loaner fleets, and then other modes of transportation around that, shuttles, rideshare, things of that nature.
Very cool. And so I think part of why we have you on the show today, got a little bit of news up your sleeve, I know. Something taking some of the old world of automotive and blending in some of the new mobility. So what's cooking?
Yeah, so we have a number of things in the pipeline. One that we've just very recently announced is our partnership with Uber for Business. So within courtesy transportation, you've got three major modes of transportation. You've got the loaner vehicle, which is really a rental vehicle managed by the dealership. The second is a shuttle, so that's a dealer-owned, dealer-managed vehicle with their own driver. And then the third is rideshare. So dealers often use either an Uber or a Lyft or another provider to hail rides on demand. And so what we've done is we've brought each of those three mobility modes and combined them within our single platform, so the dealer can manage everything in the one spot, conduct the analysis that they need to make the correct decisions for their business in the one place. And for the ride hail piece, we've partnered with Uber.
I like that. I mean, in my mind, a car dealer, they want nothing more than to sell you a car and have you get on your merry way. But there's this kind of classic side business, right, where the vehicle's in for a recall, a service, whatever, and they have to kind of spin up a side business, basically like doing managed transportation, like running a bus shuttle or keeping a fleet running. So I have to imagine like anything that makes this easy for the dealers, they're happy to not have to worry about it.
Yeah, that's right. I think franchise dealers and OEMs are sort of quite publicly facing disruption from a range of different angles. You've got autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, digital retailing, so on and so forth. Direct to consumer models as well. So I think historically, going back decades, dealers were probably best known for pushing metal, whereas now I think there has to be a much heavier focus on the customer experience and really selling that experience and focusing on the longevity of the customer journey with that dealership. So that's where I think service plays that increasingly important role. So, service sides of a dealership's business already contribute roughly 50% of their bottom line. And I think the longevity is just going to become increasingly important. And so when the customer comes in for that service, a key part of the experience is, A, do they actually need to come in at all, or can the dealership actually go to their home or their place of work and pick up the vehicle, bring it into the dealership, and then deliver it remotely? Or in the case of when a customer does visit the dealership, how seamless is that experience of getting the customer back on their way with a convenient mode of transportation that suits their needs? So that's where we're playing a very small role in helping the dealer to provide better service to their customers.
I feel like this is a great example of the sort of the adage of software eating the world, or the SaaSification of the universe. Just everything becomes a recurring, ongoing relationship versus a one-time transaction. Can you get a little bit more into, like, say I'm Joe or Jane dealer, what does this actual new launch mean? Like, how do I interact with Uber through the Connexion software?
Sure. So from a dealership perspective, it's kind of interesting that the longer we've been on this journey, the more we've seen just how differently some dealers operate one from the next. So a simple example of that would be which individual at the dealership actually makes courtesy transportation happen. So at some dealerships, you'll have one individual who handles the loaner fleet, the shuttle and or ride hail. That can happen sometimes, but it's rare. Often what you'll see is you'll have different people responsible for different things. So the service advisor might be able to book rideshare themselves, but if the customer needs to get put into a loaner car, they'll send them to the loaner car desk. Or if they need to get put into a shuttle, they'll send them to perhaps someone else who then needs to manually coordinate that shuttle. So what our software allows dealers to do is to have, if they want, that single individual managing everything quite seamlessly. So in terms of the actual dealership personnel themselves, DMS integration allows them to have most of the information pre-filled. They can pretty quickly get the customer on their way. The text message is sent to the customer's phone. Customer can then manage the ride through the Uber app if they have it, or if they don't, they can just manage it from a web link. So it's pretty easy for the customer as well. Then once a customer's back at their home or their place of work and they want to come back to the dealership, they don't actually need to contact the dealership. They can just book their own ride again through the Uber app or through the web link. So they have that sort of empowerment where they can just coordinate themselves without needing to call the dealer.
Cool. Sounds convenient.
Yeah. We think it's it'll be pretty. It's pretty neat for the customers. There are a number of dealers of ours using the product already. We've booked tens of thousands of trips using the product, so it's working pretty well. And I think what the dealers also get is better insight as to what's actually happening. So for the management at the dealership, they can actually see a lot more clearly what activity is taking place at the service advisor level and at the customer level. And then they can make decisions around, should we optimize more for loaner vehicles, for shuttle, for rideshare, or maybe put in, some ring fencing or some, other controls, budget controls, for example. Rideshare it's a great variable tool. Some dealers are a little apprehensive of the potential cost, but
Sure.
they can control that through the product, so they can set their budgets. That say the dealer only wants to spend a maximum of $20 a trip, for example. They can make that happen through the app and then automatically charge the customer for anything above that. It's a pretty flexible tool.
Cool. Sounds like something I would look forward to using if I was taking my car to a dealer.
Yeah.
And so we touched on this at the beginning. Everyone that comes on the show has like a slightly different mobility journey. A way that they ended up in our kind of wacky industry over here. Sounds like you kind of came in from the finance side. So can you share a little bit more about how'd you fall in with this crew?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's probably one of the lesser trodden paths, I would imagine. But yeah, my passion originally was in funds management. So I was co-founder of a fund, and really loved that journey and that experience. And there's the famous one of the countless famous quotes from Buffett that being managing capital helps you to become a better business person, and being a business person helps you in your management of capital. So it really ultimately came about, I suppose, by accident. So Connexion needed actually emergency funding. This is quite a few years ago. So the company was going through a difficult patch. It was generating revenue. It had a fleet management product built and validated at scale by a tier 1 customer, being General Motors. So it had quite a few things going in its favor, but it was still burning cash. So it needed some assistance, and that's where I got to know the company. And then personally, I had a couple of things sort of in the back of my mind over the years. One is funds management it's the best game in the world in many respects, but it is a zero-sum game. And I had this sort of increasing desire to contribute to a positive sum game. And then the second was just the increasing pace of change within software generally. So being still relatively young, I didn't want to, I felt like I was getting left behind. So I wanted to get closer to the source of the action, and so then there was an opportunity at Connexion, and here we are. So yeah, bit of an unusual journey.
Yeah. How do you like being on this side of the fence then, being a transportation automotive guy?
I love it, actually. Can honestly say I have not looked back. It's been really wonderful just being able to, contribute to something a little more tangible. So, we typically look at software as being an intangible thing, but I guess from a background of funds management, it's a much more tangible.
It's more than just spreadsheets.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, we're realistic about things where we're focusing on a very narrow area within a particular subset of an industry, courtesy transportation within automotive retail. it's pretty narrow. So we're not, we can't say we're doing, changing the world in the most extraordinary way, but we know that every day we're making life a little bit easier for our dealership customers, a little bit easier for our OEM customers, and a little bit easier for their end customers. So it's really satisfying.
You got to start somewhere. Yeah, don't sell yourself short. Um, I'm curious. Building a company in Australia, particularly like a transportation mobility company, other than some old Holdens on the road, like not necessarily one of the world's hot spots for mobility. What's it like, kind of being out there in your own space?
It's been it's been good. I mean, it gives us, I think, a good, or at least for me, probably the work-life balance would be the wrong word to use, but it allows us to have, I guess, a more balanced day. So in the mornings, we sort of dedicate our time to US meetings, US calls, because we catch the end of the US day. So we have that sort of intense period of, for our morning through to lunchtime of everything being US focused. And then, things can quieten down sort of earlier in the day, have some time to, get outside, exercise, do some deeper thinking, and then catch back up on work sort of throughout the day, and then maybe have some later evening calls. So for me personally, it works really, really well. We have all of our product and engineers in Australia, customer-facing team in the States. On the engineering side, it's actually pretty handy because we can do, I guess, all of our product releases through the US
Overnight.
evening. So it's actually a less risky proposition because if anything needs fixing, it's done whilst our customers are asleep. So it actually works pretty well for us.
It's a pretty compelling pitch. I would say, yeah, startup founders, bring your companies to Australia. It sounds good.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's not, I can't say it was by design, because it is something that but I think with most things, you got to, just find the positive aspects, really make the most of those, and go from there. So we've done that well, and I think it's been working really well for our customers, working for us. So yeah, we're sticking to it.
Final question for you, and it's sort of a double header, but where do you see Connexion going in the next couple of years, and where do you see like the landscape as a whole headed?
Sure. So I think, from a Connexion perspective, we're in a fortunate position because we actually have quite a large user base already. So through the GM contract, we service all of the General Motors dealers within the US. So it's approximately 4,000 dealers. So we have a substantial footprint through which we can really expand what we're doing today. So we're dominant in loaner car management. We have a shuttle and rideshare management product as well. So that's probably where most of our growth is going to come from, is increasing the dominance of managing those aspects for our existing dealer customers. Then there are some other interesting projects we've got underway. So we're working with Isuzu North America on one of their rental, so commercial rental projects. And I think dealers themselves have actually a significant opportunity to become more like a mobility hub. If you look at the fixed costs of dealerships and compare those with the fixed costs of, say, a traditional rental car company, or even some other organizations in the fleet management space, the fixed costs are substantially similar. You've got the vehicles, you've got the body shops, you've got the core staff, the technicians, you've got the real estate. And so what we think about as a software company is how can we help these dealerships better utilize or better leverage those fixed assets that they already have. And I think in a lot of cases there are individual dealers, even dealer groups that would like to do some of these things, but they are simply unable to coordinate themselves at scale to pull them off. So, for example, paid rental would be an example of that. Now, yes, paid rental is a difficult space to play in many respects. Operationally, it can be really challenging. However, what we're seeing with dealers today is they're already managing a rental operation, but it's for their service customers. Within the rental space, your P&L is driven by, how quickly you get above that break-even point of utilization. So call it
Sure.
75% utilization. So if there's a way for a party to aggregate demand at scale and then funnel some of that demand down to the dealerships, that can be quite compelling from a dealer's bottom line perspective, and not something they'd be able to coordinate themselves. So
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
things that we're working on, things that can work at scale, that a single dealer or dealer group wouldn't be able to pull off on their own.
Yeah. Sounds great. Well, Aaryn, appreciate you stopping by, and looking forward to seeing the software release in the wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was great. Always great to chat. Thanks for having me on the podcast.